Hey there, I'm Joel Michael, and today I want to show you some tried and true Jamaican dub effects as heard in the music of dub pioneer King Tubby. I will be using FL Studio for the examples in here, but any DAW will work. Alright, so the first thing I want to point out with this Jamaican-esque track is going to be the instrumentation. So I've chose to use drum set and samples that are relatively live sounding to where it imitates the sound of a real drum kit for the most part. Those are green. Blue, we're going to have electric guitars. Then we're going to have organ, bass, more electric guitars in the blue here. Then I have a harp playing a melodic figure. This isn't typical of the genre per se, but it is a defining element of the conceptual EP that this track is a part of. And I'll have a link in the description below. More guitars. I think that about does it. Okay, so first thing is let's go through and kind of listen to the instruments individually. So I've got a basic drum pattern. Alright, so what you notice here is the kick and the side stick are hitting on 2 and 4. Now, most hip-hop music, the kick would definitely start on beat 1, and that's something about this Jamaican genre is they typically don't accentuate beat 1 with the kick. Alright, the hi-hats are a bit shuffled, and then just to thicken it up and give it a little more character, so my own personal vibe, I added another layer of snares and another hi-hat layer. This is not exactly typical per se, but it's something that I wanted to do to help bring it to life a bit. Alright, so we got a nice sort of dry drum sound there. Let's add in the electric guitars next. So typically in this genre, you're going to have clean guitars, not distorted, and it's going to accentuate the upbeat. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's going to be staccato notes and sometimes even muted. That way they're not ringing out long. All right, and then typically you'd have an organ. It's going to be playing 16th notes. The 1 E A2 E N A3 E N A4 E N A. And I chose to use another guitar to do that, just in a little bit of a lower register. Alright, so now we've got a nice syncopated rhythmic groove happening that definitely sounds pretty Jamaican inspired. Alright, now let's go down to the organ. Alright, so the role here was to add that pad aspect and to thicken it up and gel everything together. Alright, kind of warms it all up. Next, you're definitely going to need bass in this genre. And the bass is typically going to be really deep. So you can achieve that a few ways. Plug in a bass, roll the tone knob down, and you can use your thumb. You can get a nice staccato sound with that and sort of reduce the finger noise, which is something you don't typically hear in this sort of Jamaican genre. If you don't have a bass, it's definitely going to be okay. You can use a sub bass, like I've used here. You're definitely going to need your monitors or your headphones to hear that, so super deep. Okay, next we've added more guitars, and they are muted guitars that double the bass an octave and 2 octaves above. Alright, so now we're thickening it up, we're decorating it a bit and adding more of a texture while still using the instrumentation common to this Jamaican sound until we get to the harp. Okay, so this is playing basically the melody. All right, so it adds a little bit of that dreamy aspect. Okay, so now that's the guts of how you can sort of start a reggae-esque track, but now that doesn't make it dub, okay? It's all about the effects that make it dub. So at this point, we want to channel our inner King Tubby and shift over to the effects. Okay, so I've opened up the mixer here, and I have 4 returns, all right? And I suggest that for most of your effects, you definitely use effects return tracks and don't just slap these effects on every individual channel. The reason is you're going to have a lot more control in automating them. As you can see here, there's a lot of automation lanes that I've wrote. And that is just the essence of this genre, actually, is you're treating the effects like an instrument themselves. And you're going to be playing them. So King Tubby would automate the knobs to send more level to the reverbs and the delays, and he could adjust the returns. And that's sort of how you created this sort of hypnotic vibe, if you will, that made it dub. So now on to the effects. So first thing is spring reverb. You're going to need some sort of spring reverb. Doesn't matter what plugin you use here, as long as it's a spring reverb. This is the sound they were using in the analog days. And this here is a replica of an analog spring reverb. Very straightforward. Dry to wet mix, bass, treble, and then how many springs it actually has, which would then create more vibration if you have more, and a little bit less if you had less. So I roll the treble down a bit because I don't want it to be too bright. In addition, I like to add an EQ before it, and that's just to reduce some of the sloppy muddiness in the lower mids. You don't have to do that. And then in addition, I've added a little compressor at the end of the chain here to help balance it out, since I'm treating it like an instrument to be performed. Next, we're going to look over at our analog delay. Okay, so analog delay, what does that actually mean? Well, this is in the digital world, so we're not actually seeing an analog delay. I'm sure you're hip to that. But the trick is these high pass and low pass filters. So an analog delay, typically, as it repeats, is going to be cutting off high frequencies and trimming away the low frequencies as well. So I have a low pass filter set to cut out anything above 1K. That way it's not too bright and it kind of fades off in the distance. In addition, we have a high pass that's cutting off anything below about 300 hertz. That way we don't get too much mud to convolute the mix. The other thing is I do have this tempo synced, right? You see this 1/8 T. It's 1/8 triplet, which is a nice syncopated rhythm that's going to go against what the snare, kick, and hi-hat are doing. The hi-hat's got these 16th notes. The snare and the kick are on beats 2 and 4, just straight. So what's going to happen is it's going to create some more, or create another level of syncopation. Now, did King Tubby have tempo syncing? No. You just have to use his ear to dial in the delay time and then the feedback time to kind of get whatever groove he wanted. But this is an added bonus you can use to help your tracks groove more if you're doing this genre. And I've added a spring reverb after the analog delay, which is definitely pretty common to do. That way it's not just a clean repeat of a delay. It has a little bit of wetness to it. Then you'll see I have another analog delay here, but the biggest difference is I'm using just an 8th note. So it's got a different rhythm pattern to it. So using multiple delays and setting them at different rates is going to help your track groove more. And then last, this is just a room reverb I have. I just put on the guitars to help it sort of feel like it's in a space. Definitely nothing you need to do if you're making just a dub track. This is just something I did to help mix the guitars a bit better. Okay, so those are the return tracks. Now, there are a couple tracks that I added the delay and the reverb directly on. One is this snare fill track. So every time that this snare fill happens, I wanted delay on it. So I went ahead and added a delay, synced to be an 8th note triplet, and then I added a spring reverb. This is a cool little like guitar effects pedals board that I've used that I think really helps me get great results because it's so simple and straightforward to use. And I'm a guitarist, and this is sort of the world I come from. I then also added reverb directly on the guitar and a little bit of delay as well. So a similar setup as what's on the strum fills are going to be on the 8th note guitar. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at how we turn this Jamaican inspired track into something that King Tubby would do to make it dub. Okay, so I'm going to start with the drums, and what I've done here is I've added some reverb automation, and you can see I'm going to bring in this track called hi-hat spring reverb, and I'm also going to bring in this other one for the other hi-hat, and they're both automated at slightly different rates because it's the performance I thought that fit the song. Let's hear it. Alright, so we definitely hear that spring reverb creeping in towards the end of the phrase, and in addition we have that analog delay echoing on that drum fill. So now there's some more analog delay on the side stick and some more reverb on the side stick. So I'll back it up just a bit so we can hear that. Alright, I'll bring this little fill in and we can hear how this one adds to the dub effects. Alright, so we definitely have a lot happening here on the effects, and I'm sure you can see why it's important to automate them, because if you just had them going the entire song, it wouldn't necessarily sound dub as much as it would just a really wet mix. So it's important to dial in each track one at a time, and I actually sat here and recorded each one at a time to create that vibe that I wanted for each track. Alright, let's move down and add the guitars in now. So we got the 8th notes. Go ahead and bring the verb in here, and the 16th notes, why not? And you can hear how that analog delay filters off as the tail goes out, and that's the trick right there. That's the sound. Okay, then let's move on to our harp melody and the analog delay that's automated on that. So it's just being brought in on the tail of each phrase to help it ring in and create a texture between. And it's, you can see here, it's designed where it's delaying when these are not. All right. And then last bit I want to show you before we hear the full thing is these lead guitars and their automated delays. All right. So now let's kind of put it all together and see what we have here. Alright, and that's how you create a dub track. Well, I hope some of these approaches helped inspire you to get creative with your effects. If you like, please push that subscribe button, and I'll be offering a new production video every single week. If you have any other approaches that you've used that have worked in this dub genre, post a comment with a link, and I want to hear what you've done. Also, I'm taking requests on topics, so if you guys have anything you want me to cover, let me know, and I'll do my best to make a video just for you. If you want to hear this full track, it's called Pull the Clouds Apart, and I'll put a link in the comments section where you can stream it. Also, be sure to scope more of King Tubby to really internalize this genre and how he uses these effects. I'm sure it'll inspire you even more. Alright, I'll see you next time.